In both the epistle and in today's gospel reading, we had two discussions going on regarding fasting, or what kind of food that you eat, both in Paul's letter and in this one. And in Paul's letter, what does he say? He basically says, what should you do to someone else who's eating different food than you? Should you look at their plate and see what they're eating? No, what he says don't judge, right? Leave that up to God, right, to sort things out. So this is a really good reminder when we come into Lent, because Lent is very much about fasting. And what's one of the biggest dangers of fasting? Is that you get more caught up in whether you're keeping all the rules and whether or not you're fasting properly, right? And then if you do a good job at it, what do you inevitably want to do when you do a good job at something? You pat yourself in the back, but what's the best thing? Tear someone else down who's not doing it as good as you, right? That's why we get good at stuff, isn't it? So we can feel better about other people who aren't as good as us. Come on, let's be honest, right? That's like the little secret reward, right, that we have when we're good at something. And so Paul warns us about that, and this particular epistle reading is given to us on this last Sunday right before Lent as a warning. In fact, all of the pre-Lenten Sundays have all been warnings about the fast. It should seem a little strange, right? So we're coming to the fast, and it's all like, be careful that you don't abuse this particular discipline, that you don't misuse Lent, which is this great tool that's given to us for spiritual growth. So we have that warning, and then in the gospel, we also have Jesus Christ talking about fasting. He says how we should fast and how we shouldn't fast, right? We shouldn't make a show of it. It shouldn't be something that is somehow visible to other people, right? And so this reminds us what the whole purpose of fasting is. The purpose of fasting is not something external, right? It's not for us to kind of look good to other people. It's not for us to kind of feel good about ourselves, that we're fulfilling rules and obligations. But it's chiefly and primarily something that's supposed to be working on us internally. It's supposed to be changing something inside of us. And so if we flaunt it, or we get caught up in the externals, we really miss out on the whole point of fasting and the kind of power that it has to change us. At the end of the gospel reading, it said, lay up your treasure where moth and rust don't destroy. And this is, again, this theme of inwardness, right? And this is a theme throughout the Gospels that Christ has. It's one of his common messages, is that he directs people towards an attention to the interior life, right? As opposed to all the external things, right? And what are the external things that we occupy ourselves with? Right? You know, money, our career, our status, you know, maybe what other people think of us, you know, all the busyness that we have in our day, right? All the external things. And you can do it with religion too, right? We get really caught up in the external things, and one of the points of the gospel is Christ is continually pushing us inward, right? Continually trying to push us to take note of what's going on inside of us, and taking note of the inner life that we have and cultivating that. We've all met somebody who really lacks an inner life, right? They lack character or personality, and there's just not much to them because they haven't invested in sort of aspects of character, right? And it can be sad to see. And so Christ is pushing us towards interior things, right? Because the interior things is the place where moth and rust don't destroy. So again, trying to get us away from an obsession of external things, right? And so much of our unhappiness in our life is rooted in the fact that we're overly attached, right? We have a possessiveness to externals. And when they're taken from us, we get afraid, we get scared, we get angry, because we're desirous of those things, and we're fearful when we don't have those external things, right? Maybe it's security or safety. Maybe it's feeling like, we belong somewhere. Maybe it's having money or possessions, or feel like we have some status with other people, right? Whatever those external things are. They can be bad things, and they can be more kind of benign things that can be good or bad depending on how we use them, right? But the point is that they're external things. And so Christ is trying to push us. And so this fast and that gospel reading is given to us before the fast to remind us that Lent is this journey about entering inside. it's a voyage. It's a voyage to the Pascha within. And here's what I mean. That for us, spiritually, the cave of the resurrection, right? That cave of the Pascha, which we're journeying towards in Lent, is the cave of our heart where God dwells. And you have to go in. You have to make that journey in. And that journey in is difficult. Difficult like the 40 days in the wilderness was for Christ before he began his ministry. Difficult like the 40 years in the wilderness that the Hebrews journeyed before they entered the promised land. And so Lent is also a 40-day journey of wilderness, of that arduous journey of going in and dealing with whatever it is that we find. And it might be dry and barren or ugly. And the point is that we're trying to push past that to find God. And that's the journey of Lent. And what is one of the main themes that we're given on this Sunday to prepare us for Lent? Other than the warnings we've been given. What is this Sunday called? Forgiveness Sunday. And today we're going to have Vespers, right? Immediately after liturgy. And then we're going to have the rite of forgiveness. Why do we do that before we enter on this journey? Other than it's a good thing to do perhaps once a year because we've probably done something to one another at some point to offend each other, or we've let each other down in some way in our friendships, right? So it's a good thing to do at least once a year. But why else would we do it before Lent? To prepare, right? To prepare. So follow me on this. We have Forgiveness Sunday, and what does it say? It says, what does it say in the Gospel reading? If you do not forgive men their trespasses, yeah, your God, your Heavenly Father will not forgive you. What is that? That sounds an awful lot like something else we heard not that long ago. What is that? There's another phrase that Jesus says in the Gospels that's almost the same thing, but he doesn't use forgiveness. It's a different word. It says, if you judge your brother, you will be judged with an equal measure of harshness. That's a very similar saying, isn't it? Those are very similar kind of sayings. And there's a connection there because this gospel is very much about what? Not judging other people. Both Christ and Paul both talk about refraining from judgment and talk about, and Jesus talks about giving forgiveness. This idea of forgiveness, it's not like God chooses not to forgive you. But it's that if we do not forgive others, we're not able to receive God's forgiveness. Okay? So it's kind of like gravity. If you fall off a cliff, if you walk off a cliff, you fall and you break your neck. Okay? It's not, I don't know if it's really God's fault, right? I mean, he made gravity, but you walked off the cliff, right? It's the same thing with forgiveness. If you don't forgive other people, you don't have the kind of heart that's open to receive God's forgiveness. And so, forgiveness, what we're doing is we're entering upon a journey of forgiveness. Think of Lent this way. Because have you ever tried to forgive somebody and it's difficult and you just can't? Right? A lot of times we think like forgiveness is just something you can give somebody, right? Sometimes that works, right? Maybe if we have a heart or a disposition that's good, or maybe it depends on the circumstances of the person, but sometimes it's really difficult. Right? And we want to, and especially if it's some really deep betrayal, and we know that we have to forgive them because if we don't, it's just going to devour us, right? We know that we can't live with an unforgiving heart because it's hell. But it's difficult, right? Sometimes we can't. So I give this to you to think about, that forgiveness isn't just a choice, it's a work, right? It's a work in progress. You have to work towards it. And forgiveness isn't just, think about it. When you forgive somebody, what's happening, right? Like say I do something really, really bad to Caesar here, you know? And he gives me his forgiveness. What's happening to our relationship, hopefully? It's getting better, right? Something's changing about our relationship to one another, right? Hopefully we're friends again, or at least we're not enemies anymore. So what's happening is a process of reconciliation. So it's not just like, oh, I gave you some word or something symbolic, but hopefully something is really changing. And the word I like to think of is reconciliation, right? So forgiveness is more than just an exchange of words. It's kind of a rebuilding of a relationship. And so what Lent is about, when we mark the beginning of this forgiveness, is a journey of forgiveness, where hopefully we're being reconciled to one another and to God, back in right, loving, trusting relationships. But that takes a whole lot of work. You can't just make your heart do that. You have to kind of work indirectly. You have to kind of soften your heart and work on it so it's a heart that can forgive. And what has been given to us to help us be people who, as the gospel says, which Christ says in the gospel, can be the type of people that can forgive so that we can receive forgiveness?
Love.
Love. But what's been given to us right now in this season? What happens tomorrow? Lent. Lent is this great tool for us to work on our hearts so that they can be open to forgiveness. So that we can forgive and receive God's forgiveness and be people who are forgiven. And the mark of someone who's forgiven, right, who has truly kind of realized what it means to be forgiven by God, right, who has fully admitted and taken ownership of their brokenness and their shortcomings, is someone who has peace, it's someone who knows joy, and it's someone who can easily and authentically forgive other people when great wrongs have happened. St. Elizabeth the New Martyr, who's Matushka's patron saint, she was the Grand Duchess in Russia. She was like a German, she was Lutheran, she came over, she converted, and her husband died shortly before the revolution. He was blown up by a suicide bomber, like with a grenade. He blew himself, the guy threw a grenade and blew up her husband. So her husband was literally like in pieces, all over like one of the squares in Moscow. And she went and she picked up all the body pieces, so they could bury them. And then, like a week later, she went and she visited the man who blew up her husband and talked with him and forgave him. And there's a real forgiveness. This is a woman who had, whether she knew it or not, had been preparing for this moment her whole life by being a woman of virtue and character, right? A woman of prayer, and allowed her to get to that point where she could grant forgiveness to someone who had done something really unimaginable to someone she loved. Talk about the kind of freedom that gives you in the midst of hardship and suffering when you can forgive. Whether it's for being able to forgive God for these hardships that you seem to that we want to blame him for, right? When things go bad, we get angry at God, we want to blame him. Right? So a heart that's able to forgive, whether it's forgiving God or forgiving ourselves or forgiving someone else, it's freedom. It's freedom. That's what Pascha is. That's what the journey of Lent is. It's freedom. Being able to forgive means being free. The Hebrew children, when they were wandering in the desert for 40 years, had come out from slavery in Egypt, wandered for 40 years, and entered the Promised Land. That is exactly what happens in Lent, is that we're moving out of the slavery of unforgiveness into the Promised Land of being able to forgive and let go. And I'm sure all of us have something big that we need to forgive somebody for, that we're still struggling to forgive somebody for. This is relevant to all of us. We all have to learn how to forgive, and we can't just make ourselves do it. Lent is here, the fasting, the prayer, the almsgiving, the services, all these disciplines, right, are all here so that we can become people who are capable of doing what Christ encourages us to do, which is to forgive freely so that we can be free. Glory to Jesus Christ.